Oh, now here we go. This was interesting.
Guys, as you can see, we're at the Senator John Hines History Center, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Getting ready to start our tour with the family. And hopefully it's going to be a nice tour. It looks like it's going to be a very nice tour. So we're going to see how everything ends up. Very nice scenery, a lot of lighting. And as you can see, it is the Smithsonian Institution Affiliation Program. Okay, well, that's something I guess you can special make arrangements for. But so far, we look pretty good. And as you can see, they do have guided tours. But right now, we're going to do our own little family walkthrough because we didn't schedule 5 weeks or so out in advance. But it's all good. I think we're still going to have a nice time. I will probably be pleasantly surprised. I've never been here before, but hey, we're ready to tour and be surprised in the process, probably.
And his family owned the ketchup and the mustard and all of that stuff. That's where that can came from. So the elevators over there, I think, was one of the 4th floor. From slavery to freedom.
Okay, and so our tour begins.
And that's where Heinz Field got its name. But they have recently changed the name, I think, to Acura Stadium or something.
All right, we're getting ready to get on the elevators to go up. I think they said about the 4th floor is where we're starting, I guess. Is that going to get everybody on?
Oh, no. Did everybody get on here?
I guess if we squeeze tight, we can all get on. We shall see. All right. All right, looks like we all made it. All right, family, give me a big hello, everybody.
Come back around. So, her mother raised me, so technically she's my first cousin, but I was raised in her house. And I call her my sister Dina. Their family had a reunion in Tuscaloosa. Okay. So the Mckee side is in Tuscaloosa today. But Dina went to school in Xenia. She graduated from Central State.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What year did she graduate?
I want to say 1990 something.
Okay.
And then she went and transferred to Akron and got her master's. Yeah. We on 4th floor?
I guess we
Oh, Lord, did we get off the rig?
It's highlighted right there.
Okay, all
Okay.
right, we on the floor. It just dawned on me, did we just following you?
Exactly.
Oh, look, my pieces. Oh, my.
Well, fortunately, Cousin Kathy has already walked through this, so she's going to be our guided tour today, guys.
Oh. But I can remember, I wish Mr. Sam would have been here. But I know he told me it started with the slave ships. I'm thinking that if we, hey, where's Harvey? I mean Philip.
Philip was in the restroom, so he said he
Oh, he'll catch up. I was thinking that we could take turns and start from the beginning, and maybe every key point someone read out loud. So we'll be our own tour guides.
Kids can start.
Maya, can you read the first paragraph?
From slavery to freedom. Freedom is the cornerstone upon which Americans built their lives in this nation. Denied this fundamental right, African Americans undertook a quest for freedom that continues today. This region has been both a destination for freedom seekers and a center for abolitionists and activists working against slavery and for civil rights. Not until the end of the Civil War in 1865 did many of the issues of slavery, citizenship, and suffrage resolve into a new world for African Americans. From the anti-slavery movement through civil rights today, African Americans have helped define freedom and shape the American experience.
And who are you, baby? You gave a nice reading. What's your name?
Amaya.
Amaya. Guys, y'all heard Amaya? She did that. She did that.
That's very well. So this is where we start. That's the shackles.
Oh.
Children under the horrors of the middle class was confined by rather shackles while on a slave ship. Those were the children's shackles for the small
Wow.
kids. Well, I'll start here. The slave ship, a floating dungeon. The slave ship became the most important machine in the growth of the slave trade. Merchant and second-hand ships were reconstructed as floating prisons, fitted specifically for the transport of hundreds of Africans across the Atlantic Ocean. The vessels brought goods to trade for humans and food to feed the captain and crew on the voyage to Africa. Weighing hundreds of tons, the ships carried up to 1,000 captives crammed into the hull.
And who are you, ma'am?
Hi, Cousin Kathy.
All right, guys, y'all heard
From
it. Y'all heard it. Cousin Kathy, Pittsburgh.
I know.
For the family people make it. I'm gonna put something good.
Yes. This is auction. This is a picture of what it looked like on auction day. This is not when they sold us to each plantation owner. I know this. I get so emotional here. I swear. I do.
It does.
Oh
It
yeah.
does that
Oh
to
yeah.
you.
Mhm.
6.5 million people came to the Americas between 1492 and 1776. 1 million came from Europe, most by choice seeking a better life or freedom from oppression. 5.5 million came from Africa in chains. Look at my feet.
Slave songs.
Yes.
Tell a story.
That's how we were put on, that's called an auction block. We were put on an auction block and sold. The bigger you were or the more muscles you had, the more they paid for you. Women and men, because they thought that the big strong woman could be a breeder, meaning would have lots of strong healthy babies. So if you were big and strong, male or female, they paid more money for you. Yeah, I know. So the Cotton King, King Cotton.
Cotton became king, the most profitable cash crop in America, from 1800 through the Civil War. The invention of the cotton gin, a machine which made the dangerous and laborious process of removing the bulb from the husk easier and faster, revolutionized the cotton industry and greatly enhanced the power and wealth of cotton plantation owners. By 1840s, cotton accounted for nearly half of the economic growth of the United States. Deeply invested in the cotton industry, Allegheny County textile mills imported tons of Mississippi-grown cotton each year. The Eagle Cotton Mill, Hope Cotton Works, Anchor Cotton Mill, Globe Factory, and the Phoenix Cotton Factory helped to make the region a major textile center.
How many of us pick cotton?
Not I.
I've never picked cotton.
I've been free. I've been free as long as I can remember.
But he said,
Oh my God. Uncle Harvey, you actually picked cotton?
You
Wow.
didn't have to. That was just something.
No, well,
Did you have to do
They're gonna
it?
leave me at home.
Wow.
So you have to pick.
I had to go with them, and they said, "Well, you gonna stand out here and play."
Oh man, I saw that in the movie. Wow.
so essentially this is
Guys, I just learned something. I didn't know that.
America made most
They
of
went
its
out with
wealth.
them.
Y'all heard that?
We
Wow.
generated, our people, our ancestors generated the wealth of this country. As a matter of fact, remember this. I'm not saying this for anybody who lives in the region. Right now, those states we call the red states down south. There were more, at one time, there were more African Americans or slaves in the south than there were white people. And till this day, when slavery was abolished, those red states, once we left and took our free labor and started moving north and across the country, they have never recovered. They are still the most poorest states in the nation. Last in education, last in health care. Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina are still supposedly we call red states, Republican run. And as much as they say that Democrats take for granted the African American vote, well, the Republicans take their vote for granted, the Republicans' votes for granted too, because they have not even progressed. They're still last in everything. So we have to hold on to, that's how in Georgia, Reverend Warnock was, and the people in Georgia stood up in our last
Say
election.
that. We did that. We did that, baby. We did it.
No, we're gonna all
And
vote
we're gonna do
together
it
and
again.
we're gonna vote our entrance. And when everyone stood up at one time, Georgia for the first time was ever able to have 2 black senators in Washington DC at the same time. So if you get a chance, do all you can, $10 here, $5 here. I do it all the time. Send it to Reverend Warnock and his campaign. We need him back on board. He is actually the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta.
And we need Stacy too for governor.
Yeah, we need Stacey Abrams to cross the finish line this time too. But those red states are still the poorest in the nation.
Yep.
Once
True state.
our labor was taken elsewhere, they never could recover. So,
Heard that.
our people knew nothing.
Get on the truck. Here comes the truck. Here comes the town.
Everybody got, what is it called? Reparations, but us. Look at this.
$2-3 a day.
This is not far from here. $30 reward. Isn't that something?
Wow.
Ran away from subscriber living in Washington County, Pennsylvania, near Cannonsburg. Cannonsburg is no more than 22 minutes away, going west. A Negro man by the name of Bob, 6 foot tall, had on when he went away a pair of patent cord pantaloons. Pantaloons is what they call it, was pants. So I guess he had on a pair of corduroys. Pants, a striped cotton roundabout, a swan's down vest, and a fur hat. He was sharp.
Hey, the brothers was ready then, even then back then.
He was raised by a certain Arthur O'Hara near Greensburg, Westmoreland County. It is supposed he is now in or near the place where he was raised. Whoever takes up said runaway and secures him in any jail so that I get him again shall have $20 and if brought home the above award of $30 probably. It was set by Joseph Pentecost in April of 1809 to pay $30 if he ran away. And plantation owners from all over the region, they all would gather around and chase us down by horses and dogs to bring us back to wherever we ran away from. $30 reward. If you ever get a chance to watch what's her name? The Underground Railroad.
Oh yeah.
That woman
I'm
has
still angry from that
swung
one.
and said, I'm out of here. And then once she made it and got free, she could have stayed. She didn't. She said, I could have freed a lot more had they known they was slaves. I could have freed a lot more people. Some people wouldn't go. They was too afraid of the unknown, to travel through the wilderness and all of that. They wouldn't go.
just scoot past you there.
$50 reward. Now, I think the guy who runs this, the man who is in charge of the African American Museum portion of Hines Center, his name is Sam Black. Black man, he's been here for 21 years. So this was all Sam's creation. And he told me that this man here had ties to Pittsburgh. Delaney, Martin Delaney had ties to Pittsburgh. Oh, O'Hara. He told me O'Hara had strong ties here. They had all the money. Oh, these were abolitionists. These were the people who helped us along our journey to freedom. That's who these people are. And they had part of the Underground Railroad ran through Pennsylvania too. So they would help and shelter us in their attics and basements and stuff like that. Yes. Abolitionists. Pittsburgh had a militant abolitionist community from the 1830s until the Civil War. A small band of men organized the Anti-Slavery Society and other organizations. Members of the African American community also formed groups to protest against slavery and actively work to free those held in bondage. Abolitionists helped slaves brought here by Southern slave owners escape. They also assisted freedom seekers in their travels north. They offered their homes as safe houses, used their businesses to help those in need, and rescued enslaved from river oats, stagecoaches, trains, and hotel rooms. Slave holders were advised not to bring their enslaved to Pittsburgh or risk losing them. Abolitionists from this region became part of a national network, the Underground Railroad, determined to see slavery abolished in America. So Pittsburgh was a place that held a lot of abolitionists that tried to help along the way. Western Pennsylvania. There was some importance to this lady. We have a community in Western Pennsylvania called Mckee's Port. This woman's name was Sally Mckee. She was born in 1797 to John Mckee, who was the founder of Mckee's Port. I knew this picture was significant. He went on to explain lots of great things that they did, the Mckee family. So I don't know if that's where we got Mckee's Rocks. We have a Mckee's Rocks and a Mckee's Port. So I'm not sure about Mckee's Rocks, but she was the founder of Mckee's Port.
What did they do?
It says, Sally grew up in a world where slavery and indenture were commonplace. Her father had 2 slaves listed in the 1790 census. One of them may have been Peter Costco, whose freedom paper is displayed here. Somebody's freedom papers is here. Facing financial difficulties in the late 1790s, John Mckee lost his home and belongings to sheriff's sale in 1798, including horses, cows, sheep, steers, Negroes, and household furniture. After her father's death, Sally lived in the household of her late uncle, David Reddick, who had been a prominent politician. Census records show that Reddick had 1 slave in 1790 and had African Americans, probably indentured, living in the household in 1800 to 1810. Later, Sally married Dr. Joseph McDowell and moved to Mobile, Alabama. So, these was the papers, the emancipation papers of Peter Costco, which was their slave. Look at that. Original paperwork.
Wow.
That's how it was written.
Did it have
It's
the
so
map?
funny how they would write like be to thee above this and all, you know, like, you know.
Oh, these are the one that had the master seal on it, or no? This is something different?
I'm not sure.
'Cause I watched
Can't
Underground, too.
remember.
I watched
Yeah.
Underground.
It said, "Be it known to all men that John Mckee of Allegheny County and state of Pennsylvania do by these present let free my Negro mare." Like,
Wow.
it just,
Yeah. Amazing. We can't stay here too much longer. I'm getting kind of upset.
yeah, I know.
This kind of stuff, this is messing with me.
But I still
I would have been one of the
learn.
ones on the tree. I'm just serious. I couldn't. No.
Oh, the defining freedom in 1780, the Pennsylvania legislature passed the Gradual Abolition Act, initiating the end of slavery. So that's 1780. That's 85 years before the Civil War. The act stated that enslaved people born before March 1780 would remain slaves for life. Any children born to slaves after that date would serve as indentures until age 28. Slave and indentured holders had to register their people. In order to prevent freeborn children, some slave owners took their pregnant slaves to the slave-holding states such as Maryland and Virginia and Delaware to give birth. In Allegheny County, records of manumission, freedom certificates, and indentures were filed to document the status of African Americans. The records show that slavery existed in Pennsylvania in one form or another until 1850. Everybody's heard of the Pittsburgh Courier? Right. The Courier was how information was transferred throughout the South. People wanted a courier from miles around. The Courier was the paper to have. One of them was called, this was called the North Star. Look at this, this is an original newspaper, but this was out of Rochester, New York. But the Pittsburgh Courier was here in Pittsburgh. Here, this is one too. This was called The Mystery. Wednesday morning, December 16th, 1846. The Colored American was a paper out of New York, 1837. The Weekly Advocate, New York, January 1837. So the press played a big role too in the anti-slavery movement. I do remember how the porters on the trains would transport the paper. That's how it came. It went up and down from north to south, was the porters on the railroad cars. Yes. Fugitive Slave Act. After the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, Allegheny County lost more than half of its African American population. Many who left were freedom seekers who had lived in Pittsburgh for decades. Some had married, had children, owned businesses, and owned their property. They abandoned their possessions for the promise of freedom in Canada. On September 28, 1850, the New York Tribune reported that almost all the waiters in the Pittsburgh hotels had fled to Canada. Sunday, 30 fled. The number that has left will not fall short of 300. So as soon as they could, they left here too. This church is Buxton Baptist in Raleigh-Town, Elgin Settlement. Which city is this? Buxton. Kidnapping. Baptist congregation in 1954. I think he told me there was a significance of this bell. This bell, they still have this bell on the church grounds.
Practical illustration of fugitive slave law.
The Buxton Bell. Freshman. Oh, and what he tied together was the church, was the Baptist church, and compared to another form like, not Catholicism, not Catholics, but
Episcopal?
it may be Protestant or something. Kidnapping African Americans from northern states became a greater issue after the passage of the Fugitive Slave Law. Numerous accounts in abolitionist newspapers told of freemen and fugitive slaves being captured and taken south and sold again to slave catchers for the southern slave markets, igniting fear. The term was called Sold Down River. These guys formed from the north side and all around the city, and they picketed outside until there were blacks allowed to work and build and have construction jobs within building the what at that time was Three River Stadium, where the Pirates and the Pirates and the Steelers shared that one stadium at that time. So they went out and put themselves in a chain link and was like, no one's working here. This building won't be built without black labor. So they were the force behind that. Nate Smith was the guy who was real instrumental in that. Everybody knows Nate. And they assembled a few blocks from Full Freedom Corner, led by Mike Desmond, Reverend Jimmy Joe Johnson, and Nate Smith. Bird Brown. Here's funny. There was a man who lived in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's elite section, like the quote-unquote people who had a little bit of money, lived in what they called Sugar Top. So those were the people who were more educated and things like that. So Sugar Top still exists today, and is predominantly still African American up there. But they were considered the elite. Well, I think I remember telling you all that my grandmother Hattie died when she was young, like 38 years old or something, or maybe even younger. Julie and Kathy were 7 and 8 years old. I do remember that. And their father wasn't able to take care of them. And one day he told them he was taking them for ice cream. And let's get in the car, we're gonna go get ice cream. He took them to Oakland to where you take your kids when you don't want them. What's the word? He put them in the system. He couldn't take care of them, so he put them in the system. And they all got separated. I guess a CYS or something today, or whatever. But anyway, he worked in the mill, but he didn't know nothing about raising them children. And I guess he thought it would be better for somebody else to take care of them. He couldn't do it. Plus, I think my grandfather his name was Ike Underwood, was also an alcoholic. So he definitely couldn't take care of 5 or 6 children. Needless to say, they got split up. And some of my mother Kathy, my uncle Robert, and their brother Isaac was taken in by people who lived up Sugar Top. One of the people was a prominent judge, and his name was Judge Homer Brown. My mother Kathy, actually, you know Julie's my mother. Her sister Kathy raised me. Her and her husband David's first 2 children passed away, and they couldn't have children. And so she said, Julie, please let me have one of your babies. Julie was having them one after the other with no husband. So eventually one day Kathy took me for the weekend, and she never took me back. So that's how Julie's sister Kathy raised me from 9 months old till I was 18. But Kathy was reared up on Sugar Top. Smart as a whip, her and my Aunt Mary, they were sisters. Those were Julie's younger sisters. And Homer Brown was the judge up there. Kathy worked for them while she lived with their neighbor And one time, councilman was Bill Robinson was her friend, but a lady named Miss Bradshaw and Miss Keys took them in. So she tried to take all three of them. Well, Kathy started dating this guy named David at 14 or 15. And she ended up moving them to Ocean City, Maryland. And Kathy cried to come back to Pittsburgh. But when she did, eventually she came with Judge Homer Brown and his wife. His son actually was a prominent lawyer too, and that was Bird Brown. Those were the people that were instrumental in trying to make sure that black labor was recognized here in Pittsburgh. So that's how, if they were up Sugar Top, like I said, that was the elitist part. But we just lost my mom, Kathy. I call her mom too, because her and her husband raised me. But I always knew who my real mom and my brothers and sisters was. And I would go stay with my mom on the weekends or for the summer and stuff like that. But Kathy actually was, like I told you, she was smart. So when I was like 13 years old, she went back to college and went to the local community college. In 6 years, she had her master's from Pitt in social work. So she instilled in us how important it was to go to college and get your education and stuff like that. But Kathy, we just lost her in 2018 at age of 75. So that was Julie's younger sister, Kathy. But
You were named after her.
I was named after her. So you see how our names just kept going. I mean, Julie named me after her sister. She was named, her Hattie named Juliet after Aunt Juliet. So that our names just recycled themselves. And I bet you Catherine came from somebody like your
Now, when
mom.
you say Aunt Julia, is it the same one that we call Cousin Julia?
Yeah, right. That was my grandmother Hattie's sister. Hattie and Juliet, Mary.
Well, no, was that the same as Hallie Ager? The Hallie?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well, Hattie's maiden name was Lewis.
Oh, okay, this is a different Hallie.
Yeah,
It's a different.
yeah, it was Lewis, so yeah. But remember, she died so young, and that kind of shut us off from knowing anybody from the history. It shut down the history. And so, yeah. So there was a young guy who did come to the reunion yesterday. If you remember, I may have introduced you to him, and his name was Daru. Daru was Kathy and David's son. Remember, their first two children died. They found out she had diabetes. And so their first two children died, and they were married. Remember, they've been going together since 14 and 15. They married at 19 and 20. So she wanted a baby so bad, she basically took me from Julie. But 3 years later, she had a son, Daru, and the next year she had a daughter, Dina. Then their last name was Mckee. So Dina is in Tuscaloosa now at the Mckee family reunion. It just happened to be the same weekend. And those were the kids that she had when she thought she couldn't have any more. Daru and Dina came along. So I was raised in her house as the older sister, but technically we were cousins.
Wow.
We were first cousins. I was Julie's daughter. Right, you know. So yeah. But he was instrumental in labor. Nate Smith and them was instrumental in the labor force in Pittsburgh.
And then Gertrude.
All right.
Ain't Gertrude?
Yeah, ain't good.
Who? And
Gertrude.
Oh yeah. What about and then Hattie, Uncle Willie Jean, Juliet, and Mary also had. Mary had a daughter named A.L.W.W, and she had a daughter named Becky. That lady that was there named Barbara yesterday, that was Becky's daughter. The lady that was there named in a wheelchair named Geraldine, cousin Jerry. Remember, she was named after Gloria's sister, Geraldine.
Oh, really?
Yes. Geraldine, that was her. But she was Mary's granddaughter, because Mary's daughter was A.L.W.W, and A.L.W.'s oldest daughter was Geraldine.
Have you all ever done a family tree to show those links with your family, because we're still trying to connect with
Well,
us.
we only go as far as Aunt Mary and Hattie.
Right,
Remember, we
but-
never knew how to go back beyond who was Hattie and them's mother and father. Hattie was a Lewis.
That's interesting. We've lost a lot of history then.
Yes.
We can't pull those connections together.
That's something
We
we
need to know
should
how we're linked.
As a matter of
That's something
fact.
we should have been discussing when we were all together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody could have brought
But,
something.
but you all are the elders, so.
But we're
Well,
on
we
the
lost
north
some.
side. See,
Oh,
the thing
oh,
is,
okay.
we're on the Ager-Williams side.
I see.
Howard was
Howard
on
was
the
the
Lewis
link.
side.
He was the
So
last
he was-
link
right.
from the other Lewis side.
And
You're
see,
right.
we didn't get a lot of that history, so
Ah.
that's where it's missing. So you
Yes.
got a lot of it that
Yes.
you could give us. I
Yes.
didn't know if you had done a book. or
No,
something.
that's as far back as we go. We lost history when, probably because Hattie died so young.
But you still have a lot of history you've given us today.
Oh,
With
okay.
your family that we don't know about. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
There's some way we could get that and kind of connect it.
Okay.
To see how we're even
Ken.
related.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
That's what we need to do, but that's really interesting because Gertrude, we knew,
And Gert.
and girl, and Juliet, she's my dad's cousin.
Okay.
They were first cousins.
They were first cousins.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
And then that's
okay.
how Howard, the son of
Juliet.
Juliet,
Yes.
became our, what is it, Lois?
Second cousin.
Or third? Second cousin.
Second cousin.
And
Yes,
then
that's right.
Angela and those are third and fourth, you know, it's just,
Yes.
that's that connection.
I see it.
But we're
I see
still
it.
trying to get to know all of you guys, and we
Yes.
got a lot of people around.
Yes, and then here's something that did happen, and I told the, my family, some of them, that we belong to a Facebook group called Reunion. Well, there's not a bunch of them. I can't even tell you how many are on there. But here's the thing. Hattie had my Uncle Herb before she moved. He was born in Alabama. Julie and her two oldest children, were born in Alabama.
Okay.
When they finally migrated to Pittsburgh, her met and married a lady named Leanne. Her and Leanne had 10 kids. So that girl that we seen yesterday with the red hair
Yes, it
and the
came in
wig,
late.
Tasha is Uncle Her's granddaughter. Yeah, so that whole side, none of them came. You understand what I'm saying? So that's another whole, 100 people?
That's what your mom was trying to tell us. All of
Yes,
the
yes.
people
Her
you
brother Herb had the most children. Like Julie only had 5, and one of my brothers is deceased. Kathy, remember, she raised me, but she only had 2 children. My Aunt Mary, remember, she was named after Juliet and Hattie's sister Mary. She was named after her. Julie had a sister named Mary too.
We got two
And
Marys
Mary,
on our
yeah,
side.
and Mary only had one child, Anthony.
Amazing, all these names you named.
We have them.
We
Yeah,
got cousins.
cousin the same.
And you know they probably all mixed somehow.
Yeah, and my Uncle Robert was, he knew Howard, he was close to Howard. Uncle Robert was close to, because Uncle Robert was the sibling of Julie's that would at least venture to find his family. So Robert knew Howard.
Our dad was Robert.
Oh, okay.
My brother is
Oh,
Robert.
brother.
We got
Oh, okay.
uncles that, Robert.
Yeah, so Uncle Robert,
That's a popular name in our family.
yeah, so.
I got a cousin in D.C. named Robert. And your mama's name was what? And your mama's name was what?
Roberta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roberta.
But Uncle Robert only had like 4 children, so there's not a bunch of children until you get to Uncle Herb. Him and his wife Leanne had about, like I said, 10, 11 kids. And there's only maybe 3 of them that passed away so far. The rest of them are actually still living.
And when we look back on our history, we find that a lot of those brothers, I think, on my side of the family, died early.
Oh,
My
okay.
dad, how old was dad? 40 something, and then
Oh,
my
he
brother
died
was
young
30
too.
something.
Okay, I
So
see.
they didn't have long lives.
Yeah, and Hattie didn't live long up here. My mom said she was 8, but when we look back on her death certificate, it looked like even if Julie was 8, Hattie must have only been 30. Like she was really young, she had TB. As a matter of fact, where they lived at was down by Freedom Corner. And just before, at one time, they made all the citizens that lived down there move. They migrated up onto the hill because that was the top of downtown. They actually lived, really that was downtown. And they forced them, gentrification, they moved them out and built what they called, if you ever heard of it, it was Civic Arena. It was an arena. And it was the first in the country that had the dome that slid back and forth. So if you had a concert or something, you could open the dome. But Civic Arena was one of the ones that was the first arena that was built with a retractable dome. And they moved it up to an upper hill. And Hattie didn't last long after that. She contracted TB and passed away and left 5 or 6 little kids. Yes. And my Uncle Isaac ended up going to the military. He went to the military, he kept in contact only a little while. We knew he lived in North Carolina. He had a wife and a couple of children. And then he never wrote his sisters and siblings again. Basically, it was like he just disappeared off the face of the earth for 40 years. Fast forward to about, I guess, 2013. Or 2014, Ginger decided to figure out, to try to pull together groups of my people. And whatever happened to Uncle Isaac? I kid you not. When we finally realized that Isaac was still in North Carolina, he had some troubles, or he had trouble, but he was a veteran and he had a drug problem. He was a heroin addict. When we found Uncle Isaac, somebody called 2 weeks later and said he passed away. So the government, I guess, that they had him cremated because he had been long separated from his wife and children. And so they had him cremated and his ashes sent here. We kept him at the house. In 2010, me and Julie bought a house together. And we kept his ashes at the house. So now that I'm in the process of selling that home, and I've moved to a new rental, I gave my mother Uncle Isaac's ashes the other day. So I don't know what we're going to do with them, but that was their baby brother. I remember working at Port Authority one day, and some man said to me, he said, "Your name Underwood." He said, I grew up with Underwood. I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Yeah, Isaac." So remember, Isaac was up Sugar Top. He said, "I was raised up Sugar Top." I said, "That's him. That was my Uncle Isaac." I never got a chance to meet him. I just see the letters, and Kathy was one of those people. My aunt who raised me kept all important papers. Like she still had the letters that Isaac wrote her. Like, "Hey sister, I'm doing okay." This is when he first left, you know what I mean? But he was in the Vietnam War. Isaac was in the war, in the Vietnam War.
That's the same thing that happened Lois and our family with Uncle Danny. You know, he just left away for 40 years.
Yes. Finally, Ginger found him, and she said, "Hey, Uncle Isaac still living," and he was living in a what you call those shelters where they let you come in at 7 in the evening or whatever like that. He was in one of the like a homeless shelter for veterans or something. And some man called Kathy 2 weeks later and told her, he said, "Your brother told me if anything ever happened, you find Kathy Mckee in Pittsburgh." And that's how we got the phone call that said that Uncle Isaac passed. So it ain't like he never forgot his sister, because I guess them two did used to communicate together, you know. But and then
how do they spell McGee?
MCGEE.
Okay,
they were out of Tuscaloosa.
We have a sister that married into the McGee family.
Oh.
So we don't know, and she's in Ohio.
Oh, okay. Well, the
McGees
McGees are having their family reunion now in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Remember I said Kathy's husband was David. They've been dating since they was 14. David is a McGee. His father was a McGee, and the McGee Matthew side is having their reunion this weekend from Tuscaloosa. Matthew McGee is what so Dina went there, as opposed Kathy's youngest daughter went there.
That's why we need to know who our family members are, because these kids get out here, young ones,
They're not gonna know anything if they're not paying attention.
And thinking they're not related.
That is true.
You know,
That is true.
It's
Yep. So it's only 12:24 and we still got till 1:19 to get the bus, so let's.
Okay, we had a long history lesson from our cousin Kathy that was very interesting. And now we're headed, I believe, back to where we started because we do have to take a tour at about 1:19 or so today, but we are headed back, I guess, outside to another level maybe. We shall see. But we'll get back with you guys a little later. We're still on tour in the museum. This is an interesting wall of history here, so I want to see how far and where this goes. Okay, I guess I better get with the group before I get left behind. All right.